Students, it is a good time for us to start the lecture. And the lecture will be delivered by Dr. Ilya Sandler, who is a researcher at Bar Ilan University in Israel and also the chief executive board member of the International Longevity Alliance. He will tell you something new and interesting about recent proceedings in gerontology, why this field is interesting, and what happened there recently. So, Dr. Sandler, please begin the lecture.
Yes, 1 second. Let me share my screen first. And we'll be on our way. Please tell me if you see me all right or you hear me all right.
Yes.
Okay, great. Not yet. Now it's perfect. Yeah. So thank you very much, Dmitry, for this introduction. It is my pleasure to be here with you for the second year. I thought I would actually come in person, but I'll have to wait probably until the next year, or I'll be in your area later this autumn. But in any case, I'm happy to provide this lecture for you to tell some of the recent advances of geroscience or gerontology. For some of you, this topic of gerontology or geroscience may be even new. Perhaps you haven't heard there is such a discipline. Basically, the subject of geroscience deals with the study of aging processes, biological aging, with the purpose to intervene into those processes to extend healthy life, to prevent age-related diseases and extend healthy life. The subject of gerontology is usually larger. It's about all the study of aging, including social aspects, including psychological aspects of aging, even environmental aspects. Geroscience is more specific about biology, about the intervention into aging to extend healthy longevity. That will be my focus here. Though I'm myself from the Department of Science, Technology and Society, so my lecture will not be about just biology. My lecture will be also about social understanding, social implications of biology of aging. What does it mean for society to study biology of aging, to intervene into biology of aging? Generally, when we talk about biology of aging, we talk about three main aspects: the possibility of intervention into aging processes, the desirability, do we want it, and the action, what do we actually do to intervene into processes of aging. And why is this important? We all want to be healthy. We all want to be healthy in old age. And if we want to be healthy in old age, we want to study aging. That is the thing that causes most disease. That is the thing that causes most death. As you see, with aging, all the diseases increase exponentially. Heart disease, neurodegenerative diseases, diabetes, all the chronic diseases increase exponentially with age, which means that aging is the main risk factor or their main cause. And if we really want to prevent those diseases, we also have to look at the common cause, at the common main factor, that is the aging process. That is the importance of geroscience, the study of the biology of aging. If we want to extend our healthy life, we need to look into aging, intervene into it. And the subject becomes more and more relevant as the society progresses. Our life expectancy increases. The younger population is becoming smaller. The older population is becoming larger. We see this especially strongly in China, where they expect the older population to reach even 40% in a few decades, 40% of the population. So as future professionals, healthcare professionals, life science professionals, you will need to study aging to deal with aging. As you can see in the graphs, as time goes by, the interest in aging increases, and the professional interest, the professional involvement in aging also increases. In the time of COVID, we should all understand the importance of aging, the importance of intervention into aging. We see that older people are the most vulnerable for COVID. If for younger people, the percentage of deaths the death rate can be less than 1%. For older people, over 60, 70, it could be 15%. That's the original data that came from China that showed everybody that the older people are the most vulnerable. So the logical conclusion is that if we want to fight COVID, we need to intervene into aging to improve the health of older people. It means to improve the aging process, the immunity of all the people, the resilience of all the people. This is the real way to fight COVID as well as other chronic diseases and acute diseases that mostly affect all the people. We educated about this importance for the past 3 years, published position papers, organized international conferences, went to the press. There is increasing understanding that aging is important. Intervention to aging is important, not enough understanding, but hopefully thanks to lectures like this, there'll be more understanding also among the young students. What are our sources of optimism? Why do we think that it is possible to intervene into aging? Why do we think that it is possible to prevent age-related diseases and extend healthy life? There are many proofs of principle, many proofs of feasibility. First of all, we see that our life expectancy is plastic. It is not fixed. We can change it for good and for bad. For the past 100 years, life expectancy increased. Now it is not so obvious. There is some decrease in life expectancy around the world. I'll talk about it later. But generally, we see that thanks to our medicine, we're able to extend healthy longevity and general longevity, our life expectancy and healthy life expectancy. Our medical technologies are improving. Every day we hear about new developments in biomedical technology, in general technology, and there is an expression that these technologies are also increasing an accelerating rate. So we can expect that more medical technologies will be able to tackle biological aging processes. There is no law in nature that prevents this intervention. No law in nature says that aging is absolutely immutable, unchangeable process, that we cannot intervene into it. We see in nature the organisms like Hydra or the so-called immortal jelly that simply do not age. They can essentially live without any limitations, without any aging-related deterioration. So we see that in nature, aging is not a universal law. We see that there are processes that can prevent aging or even obviate aging, eliminate aging. So we need to learn those processes and try to see what is applicable to humans. And we see that there are already many experimental interventions into aging that are able to prevent age-related disease, to extend life. For example, in more complex organisms like mice, were able to extend life by 30, 40% by simple genetic intervention into aging. And in simpler organisms like nematode worms, were able to extend life many folds, even 10 times, by simple genetic intervention into aging. So this shows that aging is a plastic, that we can intervene into aging, affect our longevity. And even without all the biomedical interventions, we see that humanity, the human race, generally evolves toward longevity. Our ancestors were much shorter lived, even without any advances of civilization. We see that during our evolution, our longevity is clearly increasing. So that shows that even without technical advances, we can be expected to increase in our longevity. But with medical advances, the progress can be accelerated. And that is our source of hope. That is our source of optimism, why we believe that aging can be improved. Another source of hope is that the entire field of scientific study of aging is very young. Of course, people were interested in rejuvenation and prolongation of life for many thousands of years, also in Chinese culture. I wrote a book on the history of longevity research, all the different attempts that human made to intervene into aging, to extend healthy longevity. But I would argue that the scientific study of aging started about 120 years ago, at the end of the 19th century, at the beginning of the 20th century. with such scientific figures as Eli Mechnikov, who invented the term gerontology, the scientific study of aging. Before him, simply there was no such term. There were theories like balance of elements, but the real scientific study of aging, observing the histological processes, the dynamics of cellular processes, started about 120 years ago. Mechnikov received the Nobel Prize for his discovery of phagocytosis. That was the foundation of the cellular theory of immunity. Before him, people simply didn't know that cells play any role in immunity. That was about 130 years ago, or in aging. Simply, there was no such concept that cells played a role in aging or immunity. And thanks to him, this understanding was achieved, and the field started to develop. And now we actually program cells specifically for immune response, specifically to intervene into aging. You can see the progress that was done in 120 years. So we can expect that in the next decades, we can expect much progress in our understanding of aging and developing of therapy. Another important figure is Charles-Édouard Brown-Séquard, also at the end of the 19th century, who did the first, let's call it, rejuvenation experiment. He injected himself with extracts of sex glands of guinea pigs and dogs and reported some rejuvenating effects. This was the start not only of rejuvenation therapy, but also of therapeutic endocrinology. Of course, people injected themselves with the extracts from animals for thousands of years, also in Chinese traditional medicine. But he was the first who actually put it on a scientific basis with scientific observation of effect. He was the president of the French Biological Society. So this is about the time when we can trace the beginning of the scientific study of aging, and we can see that in 120 years, 130 years, we went a very long way, and this gives us hope, this gives us optimism that in the future we can continue to progress. And by the way, if you want to learn more about it, you can go to my website, longevityhistory.com, and download those books on history of longevity research for free. Still, despite the 100 years, we don't have a clear understanding what aging is. We don't have an established theory of aging that would explain the phenomena that we observe, that would explain the intervention that we have. In the 1990s, the Russian British gerontologist, researchers of aging, named Zheros Medvedev, classified different theories of aging and calculated about 300 theories of aging. So obviously there is no consensus, no common ground. There are different types of theories. For example, there are theories of damage, there are genetic theories of aging, there are evolutionary theories of aging. There are theories based on just comparison, comparing older people with younger people, various types of theories of aging. And it is understandable there are so many theories because aging is a very complex process. Basically, aging is life, but in older age. As we progress in life, in our ontogenesis, we also progress toward aging. So we have to understand everything about life in order to understand everything about aging. That's why we have so many theories. And that reminds of the famous fable of an elephant. The scientists looked at the elephant from different angles, and somebody felt the trunk and said, it looks like a rope, and somebody felt the leg and said it looks like a pillar. But an elephant is much bigger than any of those parts. So that's also how we should understand aging. There's a lot of different components, a lot of factors coming together. Everything changes with age. Everything can be said to cause aging. So we have to integrate a lot of components. But generally, these are the main theories of aging. First of all, there is a division between so-called stochastic theories, theories of chaos, basically that says that we age because of the chaos in our organism increases, the entropy increases. And there are genetic theories, the program theories that say that that we age because we have a program, not just for aging, but for our entire development, that establishes that at a certain age, we experience deterioration and eventually die. So these are the two main types of theories of aging. Of course, they are connected to evolutionary theory that explains how those changes emerged in the course of evolution. This is an introductory lecture. I don't have the ability, the time to go into all the details, but at least you should be aware of the different types of aging theory and understand that there's still a lot of things to discover, a lot of things to put together to integrate in terms of understanding of aging and how we should intervene into it. Right now, the approach to aging is more practical. Yes, we know there are 300 years of aging. Yes, we know that everything changes with age. But if we really want to intervene into aging to prevent age-related diseases, to extend our longevity, we have to limit our choices. We have to limit our categories. So there appeared a few classification systems of the main processes of aging, which said these are the main processes. If we are intervening with them, if we're able to prevent them, we have a good chance to prevent multiple age-related diseases. This is the main idea of geroscience, that if we intervene into aging, we'll prevent multiple age-related diseases. Why? Because aging is the main risk factor. And in this main risk factor, we have several most important processes that we can count. Some system have 7 causes, some have 9 or 12, as I'll show later. But the main idea is that we can separate several most important components for aging and intervene into each one of them, and of course integrate the different interventions. So this is the most popular approach right now. This is how most of the biology of aging now operates. They want to intervene into those major aging processes, and for each such process, they were shown specific means of intervention. For example, one popular system that started at the beginning of the centuries of the century called strategies for engineered negligible senescence. Basically, the idea that you can engineer your senescence like you engineer everything in technology. And it has 7 main causes of aging: cell loss, death-resistant cells, oncogenic mutations, mitochondrial mutation, intracellular aggregations, extracellular aggregates, extracellular crosslinks. These are the main aging process in this classification system. And for each such process, there is a way of intervention that was shown to work, at least in animal models. And later, there are other classification systems, such as the pillars of aging. That is the official classification system of the American National Institute of Health, the Geroscience Interest Group. Basically, it includes representatives of many institutes in the NIH, in the American main research funding organization. And these are the 7 main processes of aging that they counted, which is adaptation to stress, epigenetic changes, inflammation, macromolecular damage, metabolism changes, proteostasis, stem cells, and regeneration loss. So we see once again a rather simpler model, 7 main processes. Each process can be affected, influenced, and there are proofs of feasibility that such interventions create improvements in the lifespan of animal models, mostly mice, but there are already some emerging human studies. Another very popular classification system is so-called hallmarks of aging. Basically the same idea, that we have several main aging processes into which we can intervene with specific interventions. So this classification started about 10 years ago in 2013, which included 9 main processes of aging, such as genomic instability, telomere attrition, epigenetic alteration, loss of proteostasis, impaired nutrient sensing, mitochondrial dysfunction, cellular senescence, stem cell exhaustion, changed cell communication. You don't have to memorize all this, but just be aware that this is one of the major classification system. Right now, this article was cited over 12,000 times in scientific literature. This is now the most widely cited article in biology of aging, called the hallmarks of aging. And now, about a couple of months ago, these same authors came up with a new classification system, which now includes 12 hallmarks of aging, basically all the old ones, plus impaired macroautophagy, chronic inflammation, dysbiosis. Basically, they just added a few more main processes, but we can say that there could be many more processes. As we said, everything changes with aging. Every process can be counted as the one of the most important. It is very difficult to separate between them, but at least for those processes, there are means of intervention, the proofs of feasibility that we can actually extend life in animal models. So these are the main classification systems, strategies for engineered negligible senescence, hallmarks of aging, and pillars of aging. There are overlaps in the different categories. Some categories appear in all the three systems. For example, the loss of cells or the loss of stem cells. This is a common process that appears in all those classification systems. Obviously, if we have less stem cells, we have less regeneration, less ability to renew ourselves, we age. And there are many other common elements, but basically we need to understand that through those main processes we can actually start tackling the aging process. But we also have to understand that these processes are not ontological, what we call in philosophy ontological. These are not a process of nature. This is not something that objectively exists in nature. These are human classifications. These are classifications that were made by observation, by operation, and we can think of other classification systems. For example, we can think of a system based on detoxification, removing harmful elements or adding, supplementing necessary lacking elements. We can think of other process of aging related to age-related diseases. So you as students, as future scientists, can think of other classifications, other ways to intervene into aging. But the main idea is, yes, we can divide aging into processes and we can intervene into those processes. Still, a crucial issue here is integration. About 70 years ago, or 60 years ago, one of the prominent gerontologists named Alexander Cornford brought this idea that yes, you can rejuvenate, let's say, a radio receiver. You can put a new battery in radio receiver, but if it's too strong for the old circuit, it will blow up all the circuits. So it is no use rejuvenating one system when you cannot rejuvenate all the others. In traditional medicine, this idea is clearly understood. You have to keep everything in balance. For example, in Greek traditional medicine, you have the four elements: fire, earth, air, and water. You have to keep in balance to maintain longevity. In Chinese traditional medicine, you have air, fire, water, metal, and water that you have to keep in balance. So in traditional medicine, it is rather easy. You think that your organism is lacking fire, so you prescribe pepper, and that's supposed to increase the fire element. But what do you do if your metabolism looks like in the right hand panel? If you have no idea when the metabolic process starts and when they end, we have thousands of interrelated processes. It is not so easy to keep things in balance. So that is one of the major difficulties, one of the major challenges of intervention into aging, that we simply cannot intervene into one element while neglecting all the others. We have to keep everything in balance and synergy. So that's also a very difficult problem, but still it is feasible, it is possible. There is no law in nature that prevents this intervention. Another important question in biology of aging is what do we actually measure? As we said, everything changes with aging. Aging is basically our change with time, so everything changes, and everything can be a so-called biomarker of aging, a measurement of aging, a metric of aging. If we compare a younger person with the older person, you'll see a huge difference in any imaginable parameter. So which are the parameters that are most important, most indicative about the aging process that we can measure to predict the health of older people, to predict the risk of disease, of chronic age-related disease, and also very important, what are the main parameters that we can measure that will show that such and such treatment works, that a certain drug or certain physiological intervention actually reduces our aging, extends our healthy lifespan. We can obviously not wait for 50 years to wait and see if our life is extended or not. We need some more practical measurements that we can check and see if our treatments work or not. We need to look at them at the longer term. We cannot just look at the short-term improvement, which can be followed by deterioration, but we need some measurements, practical measurements that we can use to predict health and also to predict the effectiveness of our treatments. There are several classes of such biomarkers, of such metrics. There are structural biomarkers that basically look at the biology mostly, such as changes in telomere lengths and duplication end products, and DNA repair capacity, epigenetic changes, oxidative reduction changes. These are the most popular measurements of aging in biology, but there are also functional measurements. For example, how fast can you walk? Can you stand up from the chair? What is your strength of your grip, of your hand grip? Sometimes these measurements are not even related. For example, in the clinic, people may measure functional parameters, and in the biological lab, they'll measure structural parameters. The idea is, once again, to integrate them, to measure what is practical, to predict health, and also to test whether some intervention works. A very important issue also for you as future scientists, future healthcare worker, or life science worker. And still the main idea remains that by intervention into aging, we will be able to prevent not just one disease, but multiple diseases. This is a very important distinction to make. Of course, we all want to be healthy, want to prevent diseases, but so far our medicine, especially Western medicine, went disease after disease, symptom after symptom, trying to eliminate them one after another, the so-called magic bullet approach. This approach worked with infectious diseases when we could clearly have a certain treatment against a certain pathogen. Wonderful, thanks to this approach, we have our life extended by several decades from the 19th century. But now this approach is no longer working. Now we have to look at the entire system, the entire organism, and here the main cause of disease is aging. And we have to understand it. And I'm happy that this approach is already recognized by World Health Organization, by the ICD, International Classification of Diseases, that now includes two categories for aging. One is so-called aging-associated decline in intrinsic capacity. That belongs to the category of general symptoms. It is not considered a disease. Aging is not considered a disease, but it is considered a kind of syndrome, a set of general symptoms that are deteriorative, that are detrimental to our health. And the second is the aging-related category, which is basically says that aging determines or serves as a risk for other diseases. We see that with aging, every disease increases, every disease deteriorates. So aging is a kind of main cause or main risk factor, and that is described by this code called aging related. I'm happy to say that also organizations where I was involved, such as International Longevity Alliance and by Gerontology Research Foundation, also advised and helped to put those codes into the ICD-11 system. It wasn't there before. These codes actually from the last year, from January 2022, and I'm happy that also our organizations helped to put them there to help recognize aging as an important cause of disease or factor of disease. And these are the two main categories: decline in intrinsic capacity and aging-related causality. But there are several synonyms, several terms that actually about the same thing, but not the same, such as aging itself, and age-related frailty, age-related debility, and cachexia, exhaustion. All the things describe aging, degenerative aging, and basically all these things can be targeted by medical intervention according to the WHO International Classification of Diseases. There's also something you need to know, that yes, aging is now recognized as a medical condition that can be treated in the International Classification of Diseases. Now It is once again the task of future scientists, future medical researchers and practitioners to actually implement those codes in practice, to implement these categories. Right now, they're only emerging, they're only on paper, but they can already serve the basis for future intervention. This intervention will not be easy. We said aging is a hugely complex process. We don't know what exactly we need to measure. We don't have a common consensus agreement on the main metrics of aging, on the main measurement of aging. This will also be the task for future scientists, for future healthcare workers, to actually come up with good practice for the evaluation of aging, not just to predict health for prevention, but also to test the effectiveness of treatments, the safety of treatments. We need to understand what is it that we measure in aging to be able to say if a treatment works or doesn't. And this has double importance. First of all, this way we encourage treatments that actually work, that prevent disease, that extend our healthy lifespan. But on the other hand, we also filter out all the snake oil treatments, all the charlatan treatments. A lot of salesmen can come up with all kinds of treatments, say, drink this, eat this, and you will never age, you will be rejuvenated. But you actually need to have some regulation. You have to have some criteria, some evidence-based criteria to show that some treatments works or doesn't. In the history of aging research, there are many snake oil treatments, many charlatan treatments that promised rejuvenation, life extension. Nothing worked. So now time has come to actually develop regulation, to actually develop evidence base for those treatments, what works and what doesn't. This is where we're at. This is the beginning of a process. A lot of consultations going on. So once again, this is a very fruitful field for you to enter, to start researching, to start being involved, because this is an emerging field on the beginning, not a very strongly established field when there's already authorities and where not much can be changed. This is the field that everything can be changed, everything can be established. So this is a very exciting time for aging research. These are some of our works that we also involved in this discussion and this debate. But there are many questions. We simply don't know even how to define aging in medical terms. Is it a disease? Is it a syndrome? Is it a risk factor, underlying cause? Do we measure it as a frailty? Do we measure it as a biological age, as a multimorbidity, multiple disease? There's a lot of debate going on in this field. At least you need to be at least aware. Once again, this is an introductory lecture. Maybe I'm putting too much information already, but be aware that a lot of open questions in aging research, how to define aging, how to measure aging. It will be important for you as you go on in the aging world. There are many methodological issues in evaluation of aging, such as clarity of definition. Do we define aging as a process or as a state? There's a huge difference. If it is the process, it is changing. We can intervene at some stage and affect the other. If it is state, we treat it as an actual disease, an actual state we want to reverse. A lot of methodological issues arise. We want to minimize confounding factors. We want to make our metrics of aging as evidence-based as possible. Obviously, you can measure some parameter in aging in the morning. It will be different from the evening. So what you aged during the day, a lot of confounding factors, a lot of complicating factors in the measurement of aging. We need to improve the information value. As we said, everything changes, but we need to select those metrics of aging, those processes that are most informative for us, for our treatments, for our predictions of health. We also have to think about practical utility. Can people afford those treatments? Can people afford those metrics? You can have a wonderful measurement system that will cost tens of thousands of dollars, and nobody will be able to afford it. We need to think of more practical measurements that more people can use in their life. So a lot of problems, a lot of questions in aging research. Once again, a very fruitful field for people to enter and contribute. There are several other evaluation criteria for aging. There was one made by Alexei Moskalov's group that includes primary selection criteria for potential geroprotectors for markers of aging, and secondary evaluation criteria. Also, the terms you need to know. We have biomarkers of aging, basically the metrics of aging, things we measure to evaluate our health, and we have geroprotective therapies. Some call them anti-aging therapies. These are the things that influence those markers. So this is the kind of double-edged sword. You need to develop your evaluation criteria, your measurements, but at the same time you also develop your treatments. Another classification system was done by the American Federation for Aging Research that also includes certain criteria, such as that the measurements should be conserved in evolution, that they have to be testable both laboratory animals and humans. Of course, all those criteria are not so easy to implement in the clinic, but at least in theoretical terms, they are important guidelines to test the therapies and to measure aging. There are now evaluation systems that are more closer to the clinic. For example, there is now a WHO working group that defines vital capacity, that basically defines healthy aging. Another classification system that uses the things we usually measure in aging, functional parameters, physiological parameters, things like immunosenescence, the vital lung capacity, the amount of stem cells, the telomere lengths, all the things are classified in this measurement system. But this is once again a classification system, an operational system. We also need more theoretical based systems that will be based on theory, like Streller-Miltwan theory, that shows how changes with age increase our vulnerability, increase our chances to die, our chances to have a disease. All these elements need to be put in place in the measurement of aging. And once again, I feel that I may be missing some of you, but you don't have to know all of this at this point. Just be aware that this field exists and these questions exist. Right now, the main practical approach to measure aging and test the effectiveness of treatment is the approach based on the diagnosis of multimorbidity. Usually in medical practice, people measure or diagnose particular disease. You know, you have all kinds of specialists, specialists for the ear, specialists for the left leg, for the right leg. In aging, because aging is the main risk factor for all chronic disease, we have to look at the person holistically, and also we can measure the entire set of chronic diseases, so-called multimorbidity, multiple diseases. We know how to diagnose specific diseases, so we can also diagnose several diseases at the same time and see how specific treatments can prevent those diseases at the same time, or how can they mitigate them, mitigate the symptoms. It's a very different approach from common medicine. Right now, we still treat pretty much every disease separately. This is one of the first attempts, the so-called targeted aging with metformin, one of the putative interventions that was proposed by Professor Barzilai already 7 years ago, that instead of targeting specific diseases, we can try to postpone several diseases at the same time. So this is the kind of approach we want to promote. Metformin is just one example. This is a drug that was known for 70 years to be effective against diabetes, but clearly it also affects multiple aging processes. It prevents glycosylation as an aging process. It prevents some immune effects of aging. So the idea of Professor Barzilai was to use this drug as a proof of principle to try to prevent multiple diseases. There are some indications for effectiveness, but still we need many more studies like this to prove that certain treatments can prevent multiple diseases. And this is quite a new approach of geroscience. That's the hallmark, the main distinguishing feature of geroscience from other approaches in biomedical science. And here in Israel, also try to promote this approach. For example, there is a call for proposals between Britain and Israel on aging called Britain-Israel Such an Academic Exchange with Aging, where I had the honor to write the call for proposals. There I also put this approach of seeking ways to measure aging as a way to prevent, to predict multiple diseases, and also intervention to aging to prevent multiple diseases. This is the geroscience approach that we want to promote. In our research, we also try to treat aging as a whole. With my colleague, Dr. David Bloch from Beersheba in Israel, we developed metrics of aging based on information theory that has different advantages compared to linear measurements. I will not go into details. I understand that it's maybe too much as it is, but once again, be aware that there are different approaches to measure aging, such as based on information theory, on measurements of entropy, mutual information, and it has some advantages over linear correlation measure. For example, it can help measure synergies, or it can help measure nonlinear relations. So that's the approach in metrics of aging that we promote in our research. But once again, we are just a drop of water in the ocean. There are many other approaches that need to come together through consultation to establish a common ground. How do we measure aging? How do we measure the effectiveness of anti-aging intervention, of anti-aging treatment? And I believe one of the most effective ways to measure aging is simply by doing anti-aging tests, simply by trying. Of course, we cannot try everything on human beings. First of all, we need to try things in animal models. But if there's a good indication that things work in animal models, I believe time has come to do more clinical trials on anti-aging in humans. I'm happy to have been involved in some trials, and also the trials that were led by colleagues in China, in particular Professor Robert Chulhua Zhao from Shanghai University, who was the first to use mesenchymal stem cells to treat COVID as the first line treatment of COVID. And how is this related to aging? Once again, we remember that all the people are the most vulnerable to COVID, and that is because mostly of the aging of the immune system, the so-called immunosenescence. There are several hallmarks of immunosenescence, such as thymus involution, increase of memory immune cells, a decrease of naive immune cells. We won't go to all the details, but if we're able to improve immunosenescence, to affect immunosenescence, we'll also be able to fight chronic disease like COVID, like influenza, that mostly affect all the people. So that was part of the rationale for using mesenchymal stem cells. We know mesenchymal stem cells are one of the most promising anti-aging treatments. Of course, they have their own questions and problems. It's not a fountain of youth, but at least in critical terms, they've showed some efficacy. Still, there was no large-scale trial, but at least there is this rationale, there's this idea that by intervention to aging, we can also prevent severe infectious disease such as COVID, influenza, and others. The main idea that we should really go more into clinical trials to start test the effects of treatments in people. Of course, following all the safety possible, we simply cannot afford to do anything that will be unsafe to people. But at least if there's good indication it could work, I believe we should try and use more anti-aging therapies in humans. And this way we can progress more towards better practices, better evaluation criteria for aging, to extend more and more treatments, more and more biomarkers of aging. And of course, we cannot forget about the good old holistic treatments of aging, the lifestyle treatments. All we talked about were biomedical interventions, potential biomedical interventions that had some feasibility in animal models, but there are also interventions that have been shown to work for many hundreds of years. We all know them. and all our families know them for hundreds of years, like exercise, moderate and balanced nutrition, rest, sleep, life-affirming attitude, the will to live. We all know these time-proven therapies for healthy aging, for healthy longevity. We don't always use them because we are lazy, but at least we should promote them more. At least educate people more. This should all be part of so-called education for healthy longevity, not just science, but also lifestyle interventions. Some people see those as antagonistic. They say we don't need science, we don't need biology. We can all just exercise and eat well and rest and to be active. But these things work together. We need science to explain those interventions, and we need to use those interventions to help us live to an age when we have more and more effective biomedical interventions. So in this case, science and tradition go hand in hand and reinforce each other. Dmitry, I think we can have some break, or we continue because our next part is actually about more social aspects, about the ethics. I hope I showed you that it is possible to intervene into aging, that it is feasible to understand aging enough to create specific anti-aging therapies to prevent multiple age-related diseases. So the next question, if we're able to do this, do we actually want to use them? Because there are many ethical questions for the society, for the individual. Dmitry, do you think we can have a break, or I go directly into the next part?
I suggest we have a short break, maybe 5 minutes. 5 minutes is okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we start again.
Yeah, just a second. Just a second. Yes, we continue the lecture.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I hope some of the information sank in. There was a lot of information. Basically, the main idea was, first of all, to become aware of the field of geroscience. I'm sure this concept of geroscience is even new for many students here. The idea that it is possible to intervene into aging to prevent multiple age-related diseases, it is feasible. I hope I have shown you that it is feasible. It is possible. Now, if you remember the main plan of this lecture, if it is possible, is it desirable? Do we want it? Not everything that is possible in science should be done. There are things that are possible that probably should be left alone and not never touched for our own safety. So a lot of ethical questions rose whether we should actually intervene into aging, whether we should treat aging, prevent the age-related disease, extend our longevity. There are many debates about even the desirability of extending healthy longevity, of extending human life. Some people say no, aging is actually natural. We should all die. We have a certain predetermined life limit. So here we enter the area of bioethics, of medical ethics, also a very important area for medical workers, for medical scientists to be aware of. Because we need to know if we can do something, whether we want to do it, whether it is actually desirable for us to do it. So here I'll have a brief overview of some of the ethical or philosophical questions that are involved in intervention to aging, into healthy longevity. They are divided into the principal questions. Is it even ethically justifiable to extend healthy life? Aren't we supposed to die at a certain time limit? And if it is desirable, if we agree that it is desirable to extend life, to extend longevity, healthy longevity. Then there are all kinds of practical ethical questions about the performance of anti-aging research, how it should be performed, how it should be performed ethically, who will benefit from this research, will it be affordable for people, will it create inequality? All these questions have to be considered if we consider intervention to aging. So also as students of biology, you need to be aware of those questions. First of all, the main theoretical question, the principal question, should we extend human life? At least to me, it appears there's no question about it. There are many debates, many people who said, no, it is not desirable. People are supposed to die. We cannot extend healthy life. No, there is a very strong philosophical tradition around the world that says that, yes, it is possible to intervene into processes of life, to extend life, even without limitation. I'm from Israel. In our Jewish tradition, there are important philosophers, thinkers, like Maimonides, who said that in the same way as we think about safety of our homes, I'm paraphrasing, it wasn't his exact words, but the idea is the same way as we think about safety of our homes, so people don't fall over the roof. In the same way, we can intervene into the process of life to preserve our life, to extend our life. This idea was also shared by the founder of one of the founders of modern ethics, Herbert Spencer, who said that the idea of prolongation of life agrees with optimistic view of life, with the view that the values life, that thinks life is a value. On the other hand, if people think that human life is not a value, if human life is worth nothing, then of course also efforts to extend life are also not needed. So basically, he agrees with the efforts to extend longevity. And also the founder of gerontology, of the scientific study of aging, Elie Mechnikov, the Nobel laureate that we mentioned earlier, he said that the main purpose of our existence, of our life, is simply to live our life in harmony, to live to longer than we live now, to extend our healthy life, what he called orthobiosis, life in harmony with our physiology, with our environment. So maybe at some later point, at the age of 150, we'll reach a point when life prolongation is no longer desired, when we reach some kind of saturation, and then it will be no longer important to extend life. But we are very far from reaching this limit. So also for the founder of gerontology, the prolongation of life, of healthy life, was an important goal. And this is also important to emphasize. Now people think of gerontology as a purely descriptive discipline, a sociological discipline, how all the people behave, even in biology, how aging process happen. No, the founder of gerontology, Elie Mechnikov, saw gerontology as a practical field, as a field where we can actually treat aging as a medical condition in order to extend our life. So this was the origin of gerontology, and we need to keep this tradition, this proactive tradition of gerontology. And this is a common ground, this is a common goal for all the people in the world, basically, regardless of the ideology, regardless of our religious views. We see the same idea in Taoism, in Islam, in Christianity, among atheists. All the people want to extend their life, their healthy life. All people see human life as a value, and if we agree on human life as a value, we want to extend it. And we see these quotes in every philosophical ideological tradition. If there is one thing where people can agree, it is in this desire to extend life. So at least in the basic ethical principle terms, at least in my mind, there is no question. Yes, we need to extend longevity if we value human life. And here we agree with many great thinkers of the past. And not just for our own sake, for the sake of our close ones, we want to extend life, but also for our entire society. Some people claim that the extension of life is an egoistic pursuit, a selfish pursuit. We want to extend our own life at the expense of all the society. maybe for the society it's better that people die younger. No, actually, it was argued that also for the survival of our whole society, it is important that people live longer to overcome our childish tendencies, our self-destructive tendencies, such as wars and short-term thinking and risk-taking. For example, this was argued by the great British philosopher and playwright Bernard Shaw and back to Methuselah, so who argued that if we really want the human race to survive as individuals, we also need to extend our longevity. And also later, the great geneticist J.B.S. Haldane, one of the founder of modern genetics, also argued that if we want to, as a species, as a human race, to survive, we need to extend our lifespan through science, even in order to be able to survive the dangers of nuclear war and these dangerous surfaces from time to time. He said it in the 50s and then 60s, and now we hear again about some threats of nuclear war. So if we want to overcome those tendencies, self-destructive tendencies, we need to think for longer term that not only we ourselves but also our society will be longer lived. And for that, we need intervention into aging and extension of our health and longevity. Of course, we understand that right now, with our technological capabilities, we are not able to significantly intervene into aging. This is the task of future science, but we are allowed to dream. We are allowed to think about the future, even longer term future, more than what happens next year. Also, what can happen in the next 5 or 50 years. And for the longer term, it is important to have this goal of extending longevity. Also, in practical utilitarian terms, we see that longevity corresponds pretty much with every human value, everything that we hold dear. For example, the so-called Human Development Index that shows how a particular society is advancing, how is it progressing, how is it developing. It is composed of the three main components. One is longevity or life expectancy, how long can people live, how long can they expect to live. The second is the level of education for the entire society, for the individual. And the third is the actual level of prosperity, income, GDP, gross domestic product per person, but also individual prosperity, the income a person have. So all these are the three main components of human development. Without longevity, we do not have human development. And more importantly, those variables are interrelated. So with greater education, we have more informed choices about our health. We have greater longevity. We can earn more. We can have greater income. And with greater income, we have more chances for education. We have more health technologies we can afford. So all these three are working together. All are reinforcing each other. So longevity, education, and income are all components of human development. Without longevity, we simply cannot develop. And we see that generally longevity corresponds pretty much with every value we have, with everything that we hold dear, with valuation of life, with peacefulness, with education, intellectual activities. It was shown that intellectual activity is also correlated with longevity and vice versa, with economic prosperity, with economic success or failure of the whole country, with equality, with safety. So if anybody asks us, why do you study longevity? Why are you interested in aging and longevity? This is why. Because longevity is a good proxy, a good driver of the entire human progress. If we're able to advance longevity or healthy longevity, we're able to advance all the other human values, starting from economic prosperity through equality and safety and all the others. So that's why, at least I personally and our colleagues in the Geroscience field focus on longevity and all the other values that are accompanied with it. It is also very important for you to understand the distinction between just longevity and healthy longevity. We know that life expectancy and healthy life expectancy are not the same thing. Life expectancy is the general expectation of how long can we live. And healthy life expectancy is the expectation how long can we live without disease, without disabilities, without being kind of I wouldn't say burden, but a problem for oneself. It is very important to extend both general longevity and healthy longevity. And the goal of Geroscience also is to minimize this gap between the general longevity and healthy longevity. For example, in China, the general longevity is about 78 years, the general life expectancy, and the healthy longevity is about 68 years. So obviously we have 10 years when people live with disability, with chronic disease, constantly hospitalized. We want to minimize this gap to increase not just general longevity but also health longevity. Of course, not by decreasing general longevity, but actually by increasing the so-called health span or healthy lifespan, increasing the period of disability. And that is exactly the goal of Geroscience, the goal of preventive treatment of age-related diseases by intervention to aging. We want to have age-related disease appear as late as possible, hopefully in the same way as they appear in centenarians. Our model is centenarians, people who maintain their cognitive ability almost until the very end, until the 100 plus years. They are absolutely mentally lucid. They are involved in society. They advise. They interact. So that's the model we want to help to have when at least lifespan and health span are about the same, or very little gap when people suffer from age-related diseases. But the goal is, of course, that there is no limit at 100 or 122 as the oldest human being lived. We can extend both longevity and health longevity. So if anybody asks, are we radical our goals or moderate? We will get whatever we can do with our technology as much as we can, both longevity and healthy longevity. Still, the recent period, the COVID period, showed that our technology are still insufficient. I said from the outset that we needed to focus more on the health of all the people, on their underlying health, their immunity, their resilience, their immunosenescence. In that way, we could also fight COVID better. And I would argue that because we didn't pay enough attention to aging, also we didn't do so well in fighting COVID. All our technologies were relatively limited. We see that globally life expectancy declined by almost 2 years. That is the official data from World Health Organization. Globally, in the years to 2020 and 2021, the top years of COVID, global life expectancy declined by 2 years. In some countries, it was a huge decrease, like Russia and Mexico, 4 years. In some countries, less, like Israel and Europe, it was about 1 year. But generally, globally, the life expectancy decreased by 2 years. Why? Because the older population was hit the worst with COVID, and so their mortality decreased, and so we had a global decline in life expectancy. So once again, if we want to go back to increasing life expectancy like we had for 100 years before that, if we want to go back to our progress, we need to address aging, to intensify our research in development and aging. Actually, during COVID, China did some of the best. Actually, life expectancy in China in 2021 increased a little bit by a few months, when in the rest of the world it decreased. We don't know what happened in 2022. We don't have data on life expectancy or healthy life expectancy for that period. But also for China, we see that the general population is relatively younger compared to the Western countries, to Europe, to United States. So also here, there is a lot of need to be prepared for the population aging, to extend longevity and health longevity. But what's important is to realize this distinction between longevity and health longevity, and once again to see that aging is the main risk factor for all diseases. And if we really want to fight diseases, we want to look at aging. Still, many people don't agree with this obvious statement. They think that that aging is natural, even desirable. People are, it's in our nature to age and die from age-related diseases. The religious people say it is the decree from God. God made us age, and some say it's nature, it's in our evolution, it's in our genes, whatever. So they make all kinds of arguments. Why extending longevity is undesirable. They say it will diminish change, it will bring stagnation, it will bring boredom, it will prolong suffering, that death gives meaning to life, it will bring overpopulation, inequality. All these arguments have been posited many times in the literature why we should not even try to intervene into aging and extend health longevity, or generally to extend life. The famous satire of Swift about the long-lived people who are suffering, who are always decrepit, always ugly. We have all those dystopian pictures of life extension. And on the other hand, there are counter arguments that show that actually with longevity comes stability that is necessary for the development of society, that our potential for learning and achievement will be greater with extending life, that suffering is preventable, that life has a meaning of its own, that we should not expect shortage of resources due to longevity, that we can provide universal access to therapies. And I believe actually in Chinese culture there are more validation for this approach. We see in Chinese tradition from the old times, from the times of Taoism, we have this veneration, we have this respect for the long-lived, even for the extremely long-lived. So I believe this is the approach we have to adopt also in the entire world. Still, many people argue that extending longevity, extending life will bring disaster to society due to overpopulation. They envision a world where all the people overpopulate the earth, take up all the resources, all the food, so the entire society collapse. Nothing can be farther from truth. It has never been observed. We see that in every society that is advancing, developing, we see that extending life expectancy, longevity is always correlated with improving quality of life. In Europe and China, everywhere, when you see people live longer, we see the quality of life improves, and also people have less children. So if we want to combat overpopulation, we actually want to extend our longevity. And moreover, the same technologies that help our longevity will also help fight overpopulation, will help bring us resources, food resources, energy resources. So we should definitely not fear overpopulation as a result of longevity. Actually, what we can fear is a bit of underpopulation as a result of longevity, but that's a different story. The hope is that we can actually keep a society in balance, both improving longevity and having enough resources to maintain the population. On the other hand, what can happen if we are not able to extend our longevity, our health longevity, if we are not able to prevent age-related diseases? This is when we can expect disastrous results for society. We see that even now, the older population are a considerable challenge for a healthcare system, for our economic system, pension system, and if it continues this way, if the younger population diminishes, and there will be more and more older, incapable people who cannot work, cannot maintain themselves, the society can collapse. Our healthcare, our welfare system can collapse. During COVID, we had a small taste of it. We saw that the disease that threatened all the people threatened our entire social fabric, our economies, our social organization. That's just a small sign of what can happen if we are not able to act in time, if we are not able to prevent age-related diseases. This is why we need to intensify our research, development, education against aging for health longevity, to really be able to counter those disasters before they arrive. The economic benefits from these interventions can be immense. It was calculated that for a large country like the United States, the savings from extending health longevity even by 1 year could be immense, several trillions for a period of 50 years. I believe for a large country like China, the savings can be about the same. For a small country like Israel, the savings can also be very large comparatively to the population. So if we want to, first of all, to prevent the disasters for our economies, for our healthcare welfare, we need to act fast and prevent age-related diseases. And also, if we want economic benefit, the continuation of economic development, the increasing resources in the aging world, once again, we want to intensify our efforts, our research efforts against aging. And who should be interested in this topic? Everybody. First of all, the students of biology, like in this class. I hope after this lecture you all become interested in aging and start researching, start expanding your horizon about aging. But generally, everybody should be interested. Everybody should be involved because aging concerns everybody. If we are lucky, if we live long enough, we'll all age. So the questions of aging will concern us. That's about general public who needs to be more interested to demand therapies to support biomedical research. This concerns pharmaceutical and medical technology industry who should invest more in developing therapies to treat aging, not just specific chronic diseases. Health insurance, life insurance systems who should also understand the benefit uh, from extended health longevity. Regulators and policymakers, obviously, every politician should realize that the society is aging, and actually these are the people who vote, and those who are more attentive to the needs of the older population will be more preferred. And of course, scientists and students, once again, I know maybe you tell me later during questions, how much did you know already about aging? But we simply need to increase the interest of biology students, medical students in aging. Aging is often not in the curriculum. It's not even included in the biology textbooks. In biology textbooks, you have development, how things develop to younger age, but then there is nothing. There's a blank slate. Nothing is known about aging in biology textbooks. So we definitely need to study more about aging, biology of aging as students of biology, of medicine, anything related to healthcare. So everybody should care about this topic. So now I hope I showed you two things. You remember our plan, show the possibility of treating aging, show you the desirability of treating aging, and now there is time for action. If we believe that something is possible and if we believe that something is desirable, what can we do about it? Usually in life, if we see something is possible and something that we want, we don't just wait that it happens to us automatically and that it will fall from the sky. We usually do something to get that what we want and that we think is possible to achieve. And the same thing is with healthy longevity, with healthy aging. We need to take action to make those therapies a reality. And not just as health professionals, as biological students, as medical students, but also as citizens, because this issue concerns everybody. So in the next few minutes that I still have, I will tell more about what we can all do, not just biology students, but everybody to advance the topic of aging. First of all, the topic of healthy aging can be advanced on every level, not just on individual level, but also on the international level. There are several frameworks. Once again, you don't have to learn all this, but just be aware that on the international level, there are different frameworks that support research and development for healthy aging. So we need to be able to understand those frameworks, to use them in also now research work, how our research work actually conforms with the global policy. On the state level, there are different policy recommendations for the advancement of aging research. For example, this is the position paper that we did in our International Society on Aging and Disease. By the way, announcement, hopefully our society will have our next conference near your area in Shanghai, hopefully in October. So we will also discuss all those issues of aging and age-related diseases. And in this position paper, we describe, our society describes the main ways we can promote research of aging, creation of anti-aging therapies. For example, increasing funding for this research, developing evaluation criteria for aging, increasing education on aging, all the things that we discussed in today's lecture. All these are the things that we need to implement to promote the aging field generally. And also there are small units that promote this aging field. For example, non-profit associations, like the associations I belong to. One is called Seniority, the Movement for Longevity and Quality of Life. Another, International Longevity Alliance. These are small units, small societies that promote education about aging research, increase communication, organize conferences, analyze data, produce reports. This is the small units, small groups. And once again, even after this lecture, you can organize a study group on aging of your own. It is all possible. It is all open for cooperation, for establishing small unit that advance this field, because the strength is really in those small units. And one doesn't have to even wait for the government to take on this agenda, or even wait to join some organization. Every one of us can advance the geroscience field. Every one of us can do research. You, especially as biology students and as life science students, you can study more about aging, because everything is connected to aging. Everything you study, just think how this is related to aging. Not just in young age, but how every disease is related to aging, how it is expressed in aging, how it is changed with aging. Just whatever you learn, whatever technology you learn, think how it can be applied to aging, because this way you can also advance the aging field and health and longevity. That's for you, especially as professionals, future professionals, but everyone can study the field, even in popular terms, even read some popular accounts, some popular press about it. Because if we have society interested, if we have more people interested in this field, not just professionals, but everybody, the entire population, the more boost it will give to the professional field to actually develop the therapies, to actually follow the demand of the people. You can join others, as I said, formally, informally, form study groups, join associations, societies, as volunteers, as researchers, as curators, anything. You can support policies at your local level, your local government, state government. If you see that some policies are supportive of health and longevity, you can also support those initiatives. And I tell you already, you are very young, I don't know, maybe 18 years old, but it starts at this age. In our experience, in our association, most people are very young. Most people who are interested in longevity are very young because they believe, they also think about themselves at an older age. They think what will happen to them, and they also believe they're more proactive. They believe in the power of science and the power of intervention, maybe even more than all the people who think that maybe those therapies will come too late for them. But it's also not true, but that's what they believe. We also want those therapies to arrive in time for them, to help them. But for younger people, there is a very good chance that those therapies will arrive in time. The motto is, the slogan is, live longer enough to live even longer. Practice all the healthy lifestyle, exercise, nutrition, rest, and sleep to increase your chances to live to the time when those health longevity technologies arrive, and will allow you to extend your longevity even more than you can now. So very important to start get involved in this field from a very young age, from 18, 20, even younger. Do the suggestions work? Do we have actual promote these therapies through our actions, through the activism? Once again, you need to understand the field is still very young. 120 years that we even study aging in scientific terms and not just invent theories about elements and a vital heat, but actually study the biology of aging. 120 years, about 20 years that we have the study of aging is more or less mainstream, because before that, even during most of the 20th century, aging wasn't such a mainstream topic. People who studied aging were sometimes looked at strange. Why are you studying this? It's better, do something more relevant for your career, for your promotion. But now we arrive at the time about 20 years that aging is really entering the mainstream. The study of aging is really becoming a global topic. So it is a good time to become involved now. And we try to do our part. Here are some examples of the educational initiatives that we promote in our association, such as every year in October we organize an awareness month, a longevity awareness month, to educate people, to organize meetings, study groups about longevity. We organize international conferences like the International Perspectives on Geroscience. We advocate for policies at the international level. Here's an example for a campaign that we did a few years ago to include aging into the WHO work program. It wasn't included before, and thanks to our campaign, many researchers, many professionals in the aging field raised their position, and eventually this topic was included into the WHO work program. I'm very proud of it, to be involved in it. Also, as I mentioned, our organizations like International Longevity Alliance by Gerontology Research Foundation made a good contribution to include aging as a category in the International Classification of Diseases, something that people can recognize, that medical practitioners can recognize as a treatable medical condition. Also, a lot of it was done thanks to our activism, to our civil society, because obviously politicians don't know everything, and we need to educate them as scientists, as professionals. We need to educate them what needs to be done about the aging population, and also in terms of science. Here in Israel, we also promote policies for the advancement of the aging field. We're able, our association, VETEC, Seniority, the Movement for Longevity and Quality of Life, was able to introduce the subject of enhancing research, development, and education for healthy longevity into the Israel Master Plan on Aging that was published by our parliament, by Knesset, in 2019. And it has these same three main components, such as increasing funding for aging research, increasing education about aging, developing metrics of aging that are evidence-based to allow us treat people, to test the effectiveness of treatment. Thanks to those policy changes, there were some calls for proposals. More funding went to researchers of aging, to calls for proposals. For example, the BIREX aging program, the Britain-Israel Research and Academic Exchange on Aging, where I had the honor to contribute to writing the call for proposals with the focus on Geroscience. We had about 200 submissions, 100 labs from UK, 100 labs from Israel. There was a huge boost of interest in the Geroscience field. And I believe in the same way we can promote cooperation between Israel and China, or between China and any other countries, because this research can develop through cooperation, simply by cross-fertilization, by getting people together, different ideas. We can actually create a strong boost, a strong advancement for the aging field. And there's simply no end to the cooperation that can be done. We can advance it on every level, as I mentioned: individual, society level, small unit level, international level. These are some of the cooperation initiatives that I was aware of, or were involved in, including between Israel and UK, and also with China. In 2019, we had a nice meeting in Beijing to organize a UNESCO affiliated committee on anti-aging and disease prevention with scientists from 15 countries. But then due to the COVID period, there was a break in this effort, but hopefully we'll renew our effort So there'll be more cooperations, and obviously we need everybody on board, students especially, as the future leaders of this field. And the goal is, once again, simply to have more therapists to fasten to accelerate the transition from basic research, from fundamental research, from the lab to the clinic, because we all want ourselves to benefit from this, or help our relatives, our loved ones, our fathers, our mothers, our grandparents to benefit from the therapies. If we sit in the lab for tens of years without developing any therapies, it may be good for our salary, but it will not help our society to achieve health longevity. So we should really need to focus on developing therapies as fast as possible. And I'm happy that through events, through educational events like this, I hope we get one step closer. So I thank you. That's what I wanted to share with you. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Just a question. So I just wonder how, like, you said that the theories of aging are quite complicated. Like, there are many theories of aging, thus there are many causes of aging. So, but how to? And you even said that there are that in some model organisms there was like anti-aging interventions were successful. But in humans, it's it is rather complicated. So, what's your opinion? What should we do? What we should do to solve this?
I think we need to deploy all the elements that I mentioned. We need to educate people. We need to get more people involved. And yes, we need to realize that aging is a very complex problem. If we expect somebody to come and give you a pill tomorrow, you can forget about it. that's a charlatan. You'll just lose your money. That's a very complex problem. It will be probably combined treatment that will involve several processes of aging, several theories of aging. So very simple answer how we should do it. We need to get clever about it. We need to, first of all, get involved, and we need to realize all the problems around it, and we need to tackle them. I don't have a recipe, and nobody has a recipe how exactly, but if more people get involved, if research organizations around the world get involved, then we have a better chance of solving it. But it's not easy.
One more question. So, quite classical, let's say classical theories of aging suggest like accumulation of biomolecular damage, or sometimes they suggest that, let's say, aging is an insufficiency of something vital. Like some older, like back in days, people were used to say that, let's say, there are not enough hormones. Let's add hormones. There are not enough stem cells. Let's add some stem cells. Somehow, well, it looks like it's still not there. Like we are still far away from solving, from fighting aging. So, but isn't it something like isn't aging? Is it possible that aging is something like this? Not the insufficiency of something important, but rather the surplus of something unimportant.
You just have to reread my presentation. I sent it to you in PDF, and you have all those questions on several slides. You just need to study them. These are very crucial questions about aging. Yes, we have an approach that we need to supplement to add something deficient. Yes, we have an approach that we have to remove something that is excessive. Yes, so we have many different factors in aging that we have to integrate. Not easy, not easy. But the point of this lecture, the point of Geroscience, that it is possible. There is no law in nature that prevents us from doing it. What prevents us is simply our insufficient understanding and technological capability. But we need to remember that 120 years ago, when this study started, we didn't know that cells played any role in aging. We didn't know what cells actually do in the human organism. The very idea of cells is even 160 years with Theodor Schwann in Germany, who even suggested that cells play any role in human organisms. Before that, we didn't know that cells actually do something. So we need to keep things in proportion. We need to remember how strongly we develop in this 150 years, and to look for the future, look to develop more our technological capabilities, things to integrate, maybe using some computational capabilities that allow us to bring different factors into record. I don't have an answer. What I'm saying is you as future students of biology, present students of biology, please get interested in aging, because that will allow you to understand many processes, also specific diseases. Okay, an example, cancer. Yeah, we all believe, basically all believe we can treat cancer. Are we able to actually cure cancer? No. The war on cancer was announced 50 years ago. We are still not able to perfectly cure cancer, and aging is actually the main prerequisite for cancer. It is one of the causes, one of the main risk factors for cancer. So if we're able to intervene into aging, we'll also be able to treat cancer. So think about it as something as they would think about cancer. Then something you can treat, you can intervene, and also look at the thing more holistically to see things not as a specific disease, but as a multiplicity of diseases, as something you treat at the root.
I have one more question. There was one slide that I cared about in particular. It was about Malcolm's. In the slide, you said that longevity progression can cause the overall human life quality to increase rather than decrease. Whereas we would rather suppose that human longevity will cause the population to grow substantially. And that's what Malcolm also supposed that energy intake for humans will eventually outrun the Earth's source of production. The pure intake of Earth, pure resource intake of Earth is it depends on the sun. The only energy intake is the sun, and it doesn't produce energy resource out of thin air. So in a logical term, in an energy conservationist point of view, there's more people, we can't use less resources or to nurture them. So why is longevity a better term for the humans world?
Great question. Yes, once again, look at the slide and maybe listen again to my lecture. That's the main point we want to make. I can answer it from several angles. Okay, let's try a few. First of all, the idea that longevity will cause overpopulation is entirely theoretical. It has never been shown in practice. In entire human experience, increasing longevity has never been accompanied with shortage of resources of any kind, food resources, energy resources. Look at the developed countries, look at Europe, look at the United States. Increasing longevity always accompanied with increased resources and improvement quality of life, and also decline in birth rates. Automatically, it's just the law of population. When you have more life expectancy, automatically you have less children. There are all kinds of explanation for that. Perhaps in poor communities in danger, people overcompensate for high mortality with high fertility. So the places where it is a danger of overpopulation, like Africa, Latin America, actually they have high mortality, low longevity, so they overcompensate with high fertility. So that's the places where we have danger of overpopulation, of resource exhaustion. In China, you see the opposite problem. Actually, longevity, increasing longevity, is accompanied with the danger of underpopulation, with even going below the reproduction rate. So if there is a problem, actually, there's a problem of less people, of depopulation. But people are less worried about it. They still worry about overpopulation. That's why we are answering this. The second way is the pursuit of longevity is a part of an optimistic, progressive agenda. You understand that longevity came along as a part of technological progress. People lived longer, but also created new resources, energy resources, material resources, all kinds of technological capabilities came together at the same time to create longevity. So if we develop technologies for extending longevity, for improving longevity, these very same biotechnologies will allow us to produce more food, will allow us to create renewable energy resources. So you should look at longevity or life extension as a part of proactive, progressive agenda. You should not think that that the resources are limited. We can create more and more resources. Actually, the Stone Age, as they say, the Stone Age didn't end because they were out of stones. Stone Age went because they thought of new resources, of new ways of technological employment. So I believe in this way we should also be optimistic and not think about longevity as something that will diminish our resources, but on the opposite, something that will increase our resources, will increase our creativity, our productivity. I hope these two aspects can answer you.
Okay. One more question.
That recently a paper has been published about things before we think about the longevity of the human, since it controls the fate of the cells. But it was recently published that the telomere is related to the telomere loss is related to the deficiency of T cells after experiment conducted through 20 years. So I want to ask, since nowadays there are 12 hallmarks of aging, which has been published in 2023. So from a perspective, well, all of these hallmarks will be gathered in a perspective like all of them are related to our immunity or the immune surveillance, which cause the determination of the longevity.
Yes, excellent question. Actually, of all the, also Dmitry asked, what is the most promising direction? What should we focus on? Right now, most geroscientists focus on the question of immunosenescence. What you describe is exactly this: the process of immunosenescence, diminishment of T cells, increase of memory immune cells, decrease of naive cells. Degeneration of the thymus that produces T cells. So yes, if you ask for one specific direction where we should focus to combat aging, to extend health longevity, it's the question of immunosenescence. And also, the importance became obvious during the time of COVID. We see that less T cells actually a huge risk factor for COVID. So the thing that most people should do is think about ways to increase T cell population, to regenerate the thymus. No, this didn't happen. We didn't see any calls for proposals specifically on that. Actually, I'm very proud. You remember I told you about the BioRx aging program, the Britain-Israel Research and Academic Exchange on Aging. I'm very proud that I was able to introduce this topic of immunosenescence research into this program. The entire section of researching immunosenescence and finding ways to combat it, to improve our immunity in old age. Actually, that was part of this call for proposals, but I'm not aware of any other calls that made this focus. So your question is very important. Yes, of all the process of aging, of all the hundreds of process of aging, probably the best bet, and nowadays the most popular and the most promising is to focus on immunosenescence, on trying to postpone it or to reverse it. And you can even read our article, which is called, it was published in Aging and Disease, together with Professor Moskalev and Professor Caruso, one of the founders of the idea of immunosenescence, Professor Calogero Caruso from Italy, which is entitled immunity, immunity and aging and longevity, the basis of resilience. You can look up this paper and you can see all the processes involved in immunosenescence and also some ways to fight them. It would be a good start.
Well, also giving a brief comment from my perspective, there was a recent paper, not very recent, already several years ago, there was an interesting paper about the gene knockout of, I guess, perforin gene. So in these mice, these mice develop age-related phenotypes faster than normal mice. So it means that these mice had defective immune systems. So all in all, this immune system was unable to get rid of senescent cells as well, like some modified cells, some defective cells. So they gradually accumulated, and these mice showed, let's say, accelerated aging phenotype.
Absolutely, absolutely. Immunity plays absolutely vital role. There are all kinds of theories about specific age-related diseases like Alzheimer's. For many years, people believed in the amyloid hypothesis, wasted billions of dollars, no therapies from that. But actually, a very promising approach to activate your immune system in aging that will actually be helping to rid of the viral load of the amyloid load. Definitely, immunity is one of the crucial areas in this area, in this field.
Okay, more questions, please. No more questions. Then probably that my watches, I guess maybe we can already finish the lecture. It's almost 5 o'clock. Well, basically our time is up.
Yes, yes. Thank you, thank you. Excellent to talk with you. Thanks for the questions.
So thank you, Professor Kandler, for your nice lecture. Thank you very much for your time. Looking forward to seeing you in China, in our university.
Yes, yes. I'll be in Shanghai area, which is close to your area, and I hope to be in October. And you're all welcome to our conference on aging and disease. Definitely.
Thanks very much, then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.